I have known her since we were teenagers. We got together 10 years ago, been living together for a bit over 7. It's been the perfect relationship in pretty much every way. We support each other through everything. We have fun together. She's my best friend, and I'm hers. We're as intensely in love as we've ever been. We've discussed marriage a bunch through the years. As of a few years ago, it wasn't either of our cups of tea, but more recently, she has expressed an interest in tying the knot. I don't really have an interest in marriage as a concept, but as I was intent on spending my life with her either way, if she needed a ring and a wedding, I was more than willing to accommodate her. As of around half a year ago, I was in the planning stages of a proposal, had even started to look for a ring. I didn't spoil the eventual surprise, but based on our conversations on the matter, I don't think it would have been very unexpected to her if I'd popped the question. If anything, she must be wondering what's taking so long at this point. But our desires for the future have diverged in another way that I can't just compromise over. She wants to be a mother, and I don't want to be a father. Much like marriage, for much of our relationship, she didn't have such a desire, but now she does. Unlike marriage, however, parenting is not just a symbolic thing I can accommodate her on. She didn't pressure me to change my mind, but she has tried to gauge whether there was wiggle room on my end, whether I could see my opinion on the matter change. I can't. At this point, she has accepted that. I could pop into a jewelry store tomorrow, pick out a ring, propose to her at the next opportunity. She would say yes, and a while later, we'd be married. Still on our way to spending our lives together, even though she knows we will not have children together. She may still hold out hope I'll change my mind. I can't know for certain. Either way, of course, I'd get to be with her probably forever, which is really all I want. But she wants to be a mother. Not only has she expressed it to me, it has been painfully obvious in the way she is around our friends and relatives' babies and children, or in the way she awkwardly brushes off her mother's comments about waiting for grandchildren. It really is plain to see. I couldn't miss it if I tried, and trust me, for a while I did, so I have to let her go. Or, since she has not exactly been trying to leave me, I guess a more accurate way to phrase it is that I have to push her away. I have considered the other options. There's the selfish option, which really just involves staying with her, never giving her a child. I wouldn't even have to coerce her into this or lie about my stance on the subject. But every parent I've asked has gushed about parenting being the most fulfilling experience they've gone through. And for some of them, I saw firsthand the exact same tells that they wanted to start a family that I now see with my girlfriend. I can't be the person taking that away from her. There's also a part of me that just fears she'd resent and leave me later on. Then there's the option of committing to eventually become a father for her. Maybe someday I'd even be thankful I did it, for me. After all, some of the parents I've polled also said they weren't always keen to have children. Some still had doubts even while expecting, and yet it still ended up being that wonderful, fulfilling experience they all described. But even as I type this, even as I try to convince myself I actually believe this, I just don't. And while I've asked happy parents in healthy family units, there are also plenty of unhappy ones, or just shoot ones in this world. I think the least that every child deserves is to be wanted by both of their parents. And I can't see myself go through with this if there's even a chance that I won't meet even that very low bar. Even less so since I believe that chance to be quite high. I've pondered variations of those two main ones too. Waiting it out and hoping she changes her mind. Maybe being an aunt or a godmother. Both are likely to happen within the next couple years. In the future can be enough. But they all seem like rolls of the dice, whose results will only be known years from now. When she expressed the desire to start a family, it was as a plan for a few years into the future. If that is to happen without me, then I need to do this now. I've already procrastinated, simply pausing my plans for a proposal when I first realized how much she really wanted this, hoping a better answer would magically appear before me. But I can't just kick this can down the road forever. I've set the date, which is tomorrow. I will tell her I want us to separate. I will tell her why, as I have here. I have prepared myself in case she pushes back, tells me she doesn't want this, believes me to be lying about my reasons, pleads me to reconsider. I think my resolve is strong enough to hold no matter what she throws at me. I expect this to be a shock to her. As I said, she's likely to expect me to pop the question rather than to end things. I know I'm going to break her heart, and I freaking hate myself for it. I'm also going to break mine, but I guess that's on me. I've already made plans for the aftermath. I know where I'll be staying for a short while after this, so I'll be out of her hair. I've laid out some options for longer-term living arrangements. I already know that everyone around us, my own family included, is going to think I'm either a jerk or a complete moron. I doubt I'll get much in the way of empathy, but I also won't be looking for it. Can't plan for everything, though. Figuring out how to live without her's gonna be a witch. Full transparency. I started writing this hoping I'd talk myself out of pulling that trigger. Hoping that typing it all out would reveal the magical answer I've been hoping for, but it hasn't. If anything, it has reinforced what I already knew. Now for a few important comments. Some of you are pointing out that I'm taking a choice out of her hands when it should be her decision, or at least a joint one. I actually agree. But for months now, I haven't been able to shake off the feeling that leaving that choice to her is in some ways cruel. Can you imagine leaving the one you love, shattering their heart, so you can then seek something they couldn't give you elsewhere? The only reason I can make that decision is because, yes, I'll be hurting her, but in the hope that she gets something she wants that I can't give her out of it. If the roles were reversed, I could never leave her for my own benefit. I know it's still unfair for me to just take away her agency in this. I feel shit about it. I feel shit about a ton of things right now. I'll feel even worse tomorrow. But I don't know what else I can do that doesn't force an impossible choice on her. Then another commenter said, some of you think I should be more nuanced in my approach. Some are being really weird and trying to shove sexism into this, or making up fan fiction that twists this into me just looking for an excuse to break up with her. Some also are saying I should just force myself to have children, which I feel are the most bonkers takes. Lots of you are also saying I need a vasectomy, and yes, that is something I plan to do. I shouldn't just make that decision. A lot of you are saying I need to clarify to her how certain I am that I don't want children. I did mention that. Maybe I didn't make it clear enough, but that has already happened. She has talked to me about it, about whether there was any chance I'd change my mind. I have been as clear as I could have been that there was not, and she has accepted it and made her choice to stay with me despite that. These are things that have already happened, but despite making that choice, it has been clear, painfully so, that she still does want children. That is why I'm taking the decision out of her hands. Maybe I'm as dumb or as big and jerk as some of you are saying. Maybe I'm going to ruin both our lives for no good reason. But there is no point at this stage in restating my stance and pawning the choice off on her again. I think the choice she made will make her unhappy in the long term, and I think I have to do what I'm going to do. There's nothing else to it. Now for the 4-day update. In my second and last edit to the original post, I told people not to expect an update. Frankly, I didn't think I'd want to write one, nor did I really think I'd have anything much to say. Things didn't exactly work out how I thought and said they would, so here I am. I did approach her last Saturday. I expressed what had been troubling me and explained to her why I thought we should go our separate ways. As I thought it would, it came as a shock to her. She told me that while she had been wanting to start a family with me, she thought she'd made it clear that she'd chosen me over that prospect, fully aware it would not happen. She emphasized that the with me part was essential to her, that she couldn't picture it any other way. I told her that I was aware of the choice she'd made, but that I did not want to be the reason she'd miss out on being a parent. That while I'm sure she didn't make that call lightly, that I can tell she still wishes to have children, she did confirm that wasn't a desire that had just disappeared, that it was still there. And that while that's true, I can only see her choice to stay with me leading to regret and resentment for her. I'm not going to retell the whole discussion. Those are the very rough, broad strokes of both of our core positions. But it lasted hours. Went through a range of arguments and emotions, cries on both sides, anger and distrust that I was being honest about my reasons on hers. I'd written in the original post that I thought I had the resolve to end things with her no matter what. As it turned out, maybe it came from a lack of resolve, or maybe she just got through to me, and it would have just been stubbornness not to listen. But at the end of it, we agreed on just taking time apart from one another for the foreseeable future. On her part, she promised me she would truly take that time to think about all of it, to re-examine her feelings in depth. On mine, I committed to accepting her choice. The argument that convinced me was that this would be the first time in over a decade, the first time since we properly became adults, that we wouldn't be in each other's life, and that if the gain of perspective from being apart didn't change her mind, that had to mean something. Trying to see things rationally, I think the reasoning is sound. On a more emotional level, I cannot say I'm 100% certain I'm not just convincing myself of that. But overall, I do think it's the way to go. The fact that at this point, I don't know what she'll decide is one thing that makes me believe this was right. It also scares the shoot out of me because, one of the two options is that I lose her. Might be dumb since I was ready to end it, but thinking about that prospect did and still does wreck me. Based on the responses I got last time, I'd wager many of you will think I was wrong to agree to this. Others advised exactly this, so maybe they'll be happy. Others, I'm sure, will still think I'm a jerk. Hopefully, this will turn out to be the right choice, whatever her decision ends up being. We have not set an exact time frame. I've asked that she take at least a few months, as that sounds like a good minimum, and more importantly, that she takes as long as she needs. We obviously won't be living together anymore. I'm currently staying at a hotel, but her decision, she will soon, matter of days, move out of our apartment, at which point I'll move back in. From that point on, we will have no contact with one another at all, except for very strict exceptions which will hopefully not arise, emergencies, personal tragedies, and that's pretty much it. I miss her already. The next while is gonna suck. The aftermath may also suck. But then again, this doesn't suck any worse than I was expecting. The aftermath of the definitive breakup I thought would happen would suck. I don't want to promise an update that will tell you how it all ends. That is months away, and I don't know that I'll be in a sharing mood. And that's even if this ends with good news. Sorry for that. Hopefully I will, though. Now for the 5-month update. So, I'm not quite sure how many people remember and or care about my original posts, but either way, here it comes. First off, I did break our no contact policy once. A couple of weeks in, I reached out to let her know about my intent to get a vasectomy, which happened a few weeks after that. It was a short conversation. She told me she did expect I might want to do that. We both confessed to missing the other. And that's pretty much it. I hadn't told her before our break because I'm skittish about medical procedures and was still reading up on and talking myself into it. And I didn't wait till after because I felt that was information that could help her reflection, and also didn't like the idea of either delaying the procedure for an unknown amount of time or going through with it behind her back, if that makes sense. Now, on to the conclusion to all of this. I won't keep you in suspense any longer. My partner and I are back together and have been for some weeks. Aside from my transgression, we had no contact with one another for the duration of our break until she reached out to me saying she had made her decision and asking if we could meet later that day at our place. Technically, just mine at that point, but you get it. Once she got there, she talked me through what she'd been doing during our time apart. She explained that at first she needed some time adjusting to life without me, not just in the sense of missing me as a person, but also of not having a partner for the first time in a decade. Our experiences in that regard were rather similar. I guess we'd both grown to be somewhat codependent. Once she was past that, she started exploring her feelings on parenthood. One thing she did was talk about it with friends and relatives, both with parents, future parents, as well as child-free couples, talking about their experience, about how they came to end up where they did. She also made a point to spend time with children, babysitting for friends semi-regularly and stuff like that. There was also a lot of pure introspection, thinking about her feelings as well as our relationship. She told me that while she does love being around children, she can confidently say that she doesn't need children of her own, and that she would rather be with the right person. Lucky for me, she still thinks I'm that person. While we both had to shed a bit of our codependency, the yearning and love for one another didn't go away or dim for either of us. She shared her thoughts on not having children, saying she'd still have children in her life through her brother and his wife, who are planning to start a family soon, and my sister, who already has one. She said that would be enough to fulfill that part of her. She asked if I could accept her decision, and I said yes, thanking her for respecting my own decision not to have children and still wanting to be with me. We talked about how worthwhile our time apart had been. She said it didn't change her mind, but reinforced it, and she understood why I needed that added certainty. She added that she wished I had been more open before I convinced myself to end things with her, as communication had been a strong point in our relationship, and it hurt to be blindsided. I committed to doing better in the future if similar circumstances arise. We've fallen back into our relationship dynamic seamlessly, and she's living with me in our apartment again. We've been catching up and having an above-average amount of romantic evenings since getting back together. Just being with her again has been bliss. Her 30th birthday is coming up over the summer, and we've planned a 2-week getaway somewhere sunny to celebrate, just the two of us. We'll also have a celebration with friends and family once we're back. I'm considering popping the question then, but I want to ensure it's still what she wants without ruining the surprise. I'd like to thank those who left comments or reached out with messages of support, advice, or criticism. I wasn't in the ideal mindset to accept feedback initially, but I found worth in a lot of what I dismissed at the time after rereading those threads over the past months. This will hopefully be the last update, but I'll try to answer a few comments. Am I the idiot for feeling betrayed when my wife quit drinking and left me to navigate a sober life alone? My wife and I have been together for about a decade, and we've been married for 3 years. I'd say we're very happy, enjoy spending time with each other, and have a similar view on the world. No kids for now, just pets. Things have been pretty great on the whole. Over the last few years, my wife has been working in a hard but very rewarding job, and during that time, her alcohol consumption increased quite a bit. She'd usually have a couple of glasses of wine in the evenings at home to wind down. Every once in a while, she'd be involved in work events in the evenings, which could get quite boozy too. Her field can be quite boozy in general. They usually have drinks in the office on a Friday afternoon, a glass or two. She never got drunk, but clearly she had become quite dependent on alcohol as a way to let off steam from her career. It wasn't unusual for her to have half a bottle of wine a night, although she'd rarely have more than that. She's quite petite though, so I guess that isn't an insignificant amount. Just to be clear, I never in a million years would have classified her as even remotely an alcoholic. Just before Christmas, she told me that she was going to be cutting down her drinking and was reading some kind of self-help book about doing so. I'm not quite sure what triggered her desire for this, but I suspect it has something to do with this particular coworker of hers that is about 20 years older and, to put it simply, is a witch and is also almost certainly a high-functioning alcoholic herself. I reckon my wife didn't want to end up like her. When she started following this book, I didn't think that much of it. She's cut down her drinking before for a while, and the new year is always a good time to start things like this. However, a couple of days ago, she told me that she was actually quitting alcohol entirely and wasn't going to drink ever again. I feel awful for saying this, but this really hit me quite hard. I know that it shouldn't. People go through much worse with serious alcoholics and all. But I found myself suffering from a real sense of loss and then guilt, thinking I'm being selfish for not being supportive enough. She did say I didn't seem as enthusiastic as she thought I'd be after she told me. I mentioned that it was a bit of a shock, and of course, I'd support her. For some reason, this is really getting to me, though. Now, I know what you're probably thinking. I'm an alcoholic myself, or at least highly dependent on it. But the truth is, that just isn't the case. I hardly drink. I haven't been properly drunk since I was at college, and even then, I hardly drank compared to everyone else. I hardly ever drink at home, maybe a beer or a glass of wine every couple of weeks. I often don't drink for months at a time if I have no social reason to do so. Basically, I'm an occasional social drinker and no more. Even in those social situations, if I don't feel like it, or one of us has to drive, or there's nothing available that I like the taste of, then I just won't drink. This is why this is so bizarre. I'm such an infrequent drinker. Surely it shouldn't bother me that my wife stopped drinking. Unfortunately, that would be too simple. Instead, I have this chasm of loss forming in my chest. I've told her that people won't really act differently around her when she starts saying she's quit. In my experience, others don't really care unless your not drinking impedes their desire to drink, i.e., don't be a weenie about it, and people don't really give a crap. Unfortunately, those rules don't seem to apply to me. I think it may be because those other people are only here for short snapshots of time, whereas my wife and I have committed to spend the rest of our lives together. I keep thinking about what will be missing in the future. We won't be able to share a bottle of wine together over a nice dinner, at home, in a restaurant, or on holiday. We won't be able to go on a date to a bar and gradually get tipsy while listening to some nice live music. We won't be able to crack open a bottle of champagne to celebrate a major life milestone in one of our lives. Years down the line, when we might have teenage children, we won't be able to give them half a glass of wine at the dining table with Sunday lunch, like my parents did for me. Of course, none of this is reasonable. No one needs alcohol to have a functional and rewarding social life, and there are far too many people suffering because their spouse won't give up alcohol when they actually seriously need to. So of course, I'm in the wrong. It's breaking my heart right now, as selfish as that may be, and I really needed to vent. I tried to find some advice online, and of course, this doesn't seem to have happened to anyone else. Any Google searches just gave me hits with advice for how to get your alcoholic spouse to quit. Far more important, sure, but of no help to me. I can't talk to my friends about it because I'm not going to betray the trust of my wife. No one else knows that she's quitting for good yet. I'd usually talk to my wife about any problems I or we have, but I don't want to damage her process right now as she gets used to a new life without alcohol. Hence, here I vent, mope, despair with a throwaway account, ready for the anonymous internet to judge me if anyone makes it through my wall of text. Maybe some of you can give me your perspective on this. Has anyone gone through anything like this? Now for the 1-year update. Today I happened to stumble across this throwaway. Furthermore, I noticed that it happened to be the throwaway's cake day, so I think someone is prodding me to do an update on this. I posted a year ago about how my wife had given up alcohol for good and how I was finding it hard to deal with. I'd like to thank everyone that commented on the original thread. I did read everything, even if I didn't reply to everyone. There were people who thought, as I expected, that I was selfish, that it shouldn't matter that my wife was making that decision, and that I likely had my own hidden drinking problems. There were others, though, that understood and could see my point of view. The original post is that my wife had decided to give up alcohol for good. She told me she thought she was an alcoholic and so was going to quit. She wasn't an alcoholic in the traditional sense. She didn't get drunk all the time or drink during the day, but she did have 2 or 3 glasses of wine pretty much every evening after work. A lot of people do that. When she told me she was quitting booze for good, it was a complete shock to me, and I felt a very real sense of loss. I felt heartbroken because I thought there would be things we would miss out on in the future together. Sharing cocktails by the pool on holiday, sharing a bottle of nice wine over a romantic candlelit dinner, popping a bottle of champagne on New Year's, toasting to our currently non-existent children on their wedding days. I felt like all of that had been taken away from me. I knew that this was small fry compared to what others went through and what she could be going through, but that didn't stop it from hurting. Everyone's problems matter to them, even if an abstract observer can clearly see that one person's problems are much worse than another's. When I Googled for help and advice on the matter, nothing really came up. So, I want to keep my original post up and supply an update to let others who might go through the same thing know that they're not alone. Some people were adamant that my wife's decision to not drink ever again shouldn't affect me in the slightest. Basically, it had nothing to do with me, and if I felt like it affected me, then I had my own problems. A year on, I can definitely tell those people that they are wrong. In a marriage, at least in the kind of marriage I believe in, you and your partner's actions and choices are intertwined. The whole point of a marriage is to share the rest of your lives together. I had expected and hoped for a long future together, sharing experiences that typically included alcohol. Our society as a whole is intertwined with booze. We first met when we were both tipsy at a student bar, and pretty much all the social occasions we've ever been to have involved some alcohol. That's just where our society is. Drinking was, in some ways, a shared interest. If you met a partner through rock climbing, climbed together several times a week, got married, and continued climbing together all the time, then suddenly your married partner said, "Sorry, I'm never going to climb again," you would feel hurt, like something core to your relationship had been taken away. So what have I learned in the past year? Well, for one, your partner giving up booze really doesn't matter. You just adjust. I'd be lying if I said there weren't times that I miss us sharing a bottle of wine together, but those thoughts are few and far between. It's far more important to me that she's happy and feels much better about herself. She's healthier, has a better outlook on life, and when we are out together, we actually spend more quality time together. I've never been a big drinker, so if we were out, she'd get tipsier way before me. So in a way, we weren't on the same conversation level by the end of the night. Now, we can talk properly throughout. There are lots of benefits too. We spend much less on drinks now, of course, especially at home. We do, however, spend more on food. That's something I get more enjoyment from anyway, though. We've been on holiday, we've been to weddings, we've been out to loads of dinners, and we've had Christmas together. It's all been fine. I always knew it would be. Other people don't really judge much once you just say you don't drink, as long as you don't make a big deal about it. My wife still doesn't tell people that she's an alcoholic. The story is still, I gave up for dry January and found myself really liking it and felt better about myself, so I gave it up for good. It's just easier, makes less of an issue of it, and draws much less attention. We're probably happier than we were before, although we were plenty happy then too. I love my wife and I love spending time with her. For what it's worth, I do still drink. I didn't drink much before she gave up, and now I drink less. I'd share a bottle on nights out before, but hardly ever drank at home. I'd say I had on average 2 to 3 units a week. Now I'm more at 0.5 to 1 units, i.e., once every 2 or 3 weeks I might have a couple of beers. I hardly ever drink when we're out together, only if I really fancy it. When I just quite fancy it, I'd usually choose not to out of solidarity with my wife. One change I have noticed is that I judge the hell out of restaurants that have a crappy soft drink selection or lack of non-alcoholic cocktails. High-end restaurants tend to have several great options and will go out of their way to cater to you. Other restaurants do seem to judge you for not getting a bottle of wine, likely because they make a healthy profit off of alcohol. Annoyingly, we're not doing it because we want to be cheap. We'd happily pay for an overpriced mocktail that's basically just tonic water with a cucumber in it. I do enjoy being prepared for my wife now, though. If we're at a function where they're handing out champagne and nothing else, I will do what I can to get her something else. I'll happily be a bit of an arsehole if a place hasn't thought about providing non-alcoholic drinks. There are plenty of people who can't drink for a number of reasons, after all. Religion, health, pregnancy, etc. Places really should be prepared. I've rambled on for a while here. It's a bit disjointed as I wasn't planning on spending loads of my day writing about this. I'll happily answer any questions others may have. With it being dry January for a lot of people, this could be something others might be thinking about. I'd like to thank a few people from the original post for their comments. Gravity Line and Spectrum 28-1 for making me realize that it could have been a lot worse. She could have opted to go vegan instead, which would have been bloody awful. Lawfoot and Shelf Life Inc. for their points of view as non-little drinkers and for giving substitute suggestions. Also, Gooberfaced for saying that our life probably lacked any real problems. That really made me laugh and see the truth in it. There are many more that commented and helped in my original post, but I can't list them all. Oh, also a shout out to Stop Drinking. I got my wife to sign up for that sub, and she's found it really helpful several times over the past year. Am I the idiot for telling my boyfriend to date his mom's cooking instead of me? I have been with my boyfriend for about a year now. We get along well most of the time, but something happened last weekend that's really been bothering me. We went over to his parents' house for dinner, and ever since, things have been awkward. A bit of backstory. I love cooking. I'm not a professional by any means, but it's something I'm passionate about and take pride in. My boyfriend knows this, but he's constantly comparing my cooking to his mom's, especially when it comes to her lasagna. I've heard about this lasagna more times than I can count. So before we leave for his parents' house, he makes this offhand comment. Maybe you'll finally learn how to make lasagna properly tonight. Yours could definitely use some improvement. I tried to laugh it off, but honestly, it hurt my feelings. Still, I brushed it aside because I didn't want to start anything before dinner. We get to his parents' place, and as expected, his mom's lasagna is the star of the meal. Everyone is raving about it. And of course, my boyfriend jumps in to say, "Oh man, this is real lasagna. OP tried making it once, but let's just say there's a reason we're all here eating my mom's tonight." Everyone laughed. I felt embarrassed, but kept smiling to avoid making things awkward. Then he kept going, saying that I burned the sauce. I didn't, and that maybe I should just leave lasagna to the experts. His family was cracking up, and I sat there, trying not to lose it. It wasn't just a joke to me. It felt like he was putting me down, especially in front of his family, who I'm still trying to make a good impression with. I couldn't handle it anymore, so I excused myself from the table and went to sit in the car. A few minutes later, my boyfriend comes out, looking confused, and asks why I left. I told him how hurt I was by his comments, and instead of apologizing, he said I was overreacting and that it was just a joke. He said I need to stop being so sensitive and learn to take a joke, especially around his family. I was upset and told him that if he thought embarrassing me in front of his family was funny, maybe he should just date his mom's cooking instead. Now that didn't go over well. He got angry and accused me of ruining the night. Since then, we've barely spoken, and he's waiting for me to apologize, but I feel like he should be the one apologizing. So now I'm wondering, did I take it too far? Was I being overly sensitive? Or was I right to walk out after being embarrassed like that? Now for the one-day update. First of all, I want to thank everyone for your comments and support. I was not expecting such a huge response, and I was really overwhelmed by how many of you took the time to share your thoughts. I have been reading through everything, and I appreciate all the advice. So here's the update. After the dinner, things were awkward between my boyfriend and me for a few days. We barely talked, but I knew I could not just let it go. I sat him down and told him how much his comment about my cooking, especially comparing it to his mom's, hurt me. I love cooking, and I put a lot of effort into it. So hearing him constantly bring up his mom's lasagna felt like he was saying mine was not good enough. He seemed genuinely surprised and said he did not realize how much it bothered me. He thought he was just teasing and that I knew he was not serious. I explained that while I can take jokes, this felt different because it happened in front of his family and made me feel really small. He apologized right away and said he would stop making those comparisons. I could tell he was truly sorry, which made me feel better. But as for his family, I did apologize for walking out, and they were actually really understanding. His mom even mentioned she would love to try my lasagna sometime with no comparisons, which was really kind of her. Things have been better since then. My boyfriend has been more thoughtful about how he talks about my cooking, and I feel like we have both learned something from this. It is not perfect, but I feel hopeful about where things are going. Now for a few comments. One commenter said he seemed genuinely surprised and said he did not realize how much it bothered me. Even after you walked out of the dinner and he had to come find you upset in the car? After he accused you of ruining the night because of how noticeably upset you were to everyone, he didn't realize you were bothered? This doesn't make any sense. Please think about that. I'm all for the rare happy ending on Reddit, but what he's saying simply does not make sense. He's had a few days to compose the reaction that he knows you want to get himself out of hot water, and you're just eating it up. Another commenter added, he's testing the bar for the tolerable level of permanent unhappiness. Even got her to say it was only because it was in front of the family, so now he can keep doing it to her in private where nobody can hear and call him out on it. And another shared, my dad compared my mom's cooking to his mom's once. Finally, one more shared, my dad did it once too. My mom made the best pies. Mom, your dad built her a house. Get busy. Never happened again.